Hello, believers, non believers, and everyone in between. You're listening to Stories with Sapphire. I am Sapphire Sandalo. Now get cozy and open your mind because it's story time. I'd like to try an experiment. If it's safe to do so, I want you to close your eyes. Imagine that standing in front of you is an 8-foot tall, slimy, green skinned man. Indecipherable sigils are scarred into his skin all over his body. He has no eyes, but you know that he's looking at you. He cocks his head in curiosity. Okay, now open your eyes. Is the man still standing in front of you? Of course not. You were only seeing him in your imagination. But what if I told you that our imagination could physically manifest entities into our reality? In today's episode, I'll be sharing stories that demonstrate just how powerful the mind can be. First, I speak with horror filmmaker Jed Shepherd about the creepy tales his mother told him and the haunted tours he would improvise as a kid that gained a life of their own. Then, actress Emma Webb joins the conversation to talk about all the real paranormal happenings that inspired moments in their horror movie, Host, streaming on Shudder.
So I grew up in a Filipino household. My mum is from Philippines.
Jed is a horror director, writer, and producer that I was introduced to through my friend Jeremy, who was also Filipino. Yes, the Filluminati is real.
And she instilled in me at an early age that ghosts and ghouls and witches and werewolves are all real. These aren't things just in storybooks and the pages of magazines and films. These are things you can meet in real life. These are things you can encounter and may hurt you. She has legit told me that many years ago, this was in Philippines, she was walking through a forest, and then she saw something in a tree. And like a lot of Filipino stories, there's a lot of things in trees you got to watch out for. So she's walking up to this tree, and she could see something in it, but there was something else as well. There were twins. There were two girls, young girls, walking around the tree in a circle, almost transfixed, like they can't move anywhere else. And then, as the years have gone on, and she's retold the story to me, it's become a werewolf in the tree playing a flute. And that's why, like the Pied Piper, these girls are like revolving around this tree. And I'm like, Mum, like werewolf stories don't usually end up this way. Like, but she is convinced, like it's a real memory, that she saw this werewolf sitting there smiling, playing the flute with these two creepy girls revolving around a tree. And when you get told that kind of thing by your mum, who was meant to be the person who, teaches you like life lessons, teaches you morality, if you're being told that by your parent, you instantly believe it. So from a very, very early age, I thought, no, no, I'm not going to accept that. I need to learn about these creatures and I need to be able to fight them. So at an early, impressionable age, I would be in the school library, and I'd stay there for a long time. I'd miss out on playing football with my friends because I needed to study spooky things in the school library. And as I got older, all of this information started to become less about survival and more about like entertainment. And I realized I had a knack because of researching it as a kid and thinking it was real. I had a knack of telling these stories about monsters and about ghosts and ghouls. And even though I'm the first to admit, I don't know if any of that stuff's real to me, but I want to believe because the world is so much more interesting. If there's ghosts out there, I would love that. If there's aliens out there, I would love that. If I would ever get to meet a werewolf, that would be the best day in my life because then I know the world is far more interesting than I could ever imagine.
Even though Jed is a non believer now, his mother did tell him a story in recent years that had a witness, his skeptical sister.
Is my mum and my sister was in Manila in one of the big malls, and there was a boutique there, clothes boutique, And they went inside. They wanted to try on some clothes. There was only one dressing room. So they lined up at the dressing room and they saw a woman slip in before them, close the door, lock the door, and she was in there for a while. So after about 20 minutes, my sister said to my mum, like she's been in there for a while. Like, do you think she's okay? So they knocked on the door. There was no answer. So they went to get the cashier, the only person working in the shop, to come and help because she might have fainted or something. So they went to get the cashier in the boutique, and the cashier was kind of apparently quite kind of blasé about it all. She kind of climbed up on a ladder and looked over the top of the changing room, and she put her hand down and unlocked the door, and there was no one inside. And my mum and my sister was like, "What's going on?" And the woman who worked there was like, "Okay, you guys can go inside now." And they were like, "No, no, no, no! What happened to the woman that was before us? What happened to her?" And the cashier said to them, "There is a snake man in this mall. He comes through the mirror and he takes girls." And so my mum's then nodding, uh-huh, And my sister, who's is skeptical, is like, what do you mean there's a snake man? And my mum turned to my sister and said, well, maybe his mum was a snake. And that was my mum's justification for there being a snake man in the mall stealing girls. But then, they still use the changing rooms, but they just left the door open a little ajar. And I thought this was crazy, but because my sister was there as well, she said that this was true. So, and then many years later, another Filipino person, a guy, told me about this legend of this snake man in the mall. So, like, it's not just from my mum; it's kind of a common thing.
So, in the Philippines during the 90s, the urban legend of the Snake Man was born when there were rumors that actress Alice Dixon fell through a trap door in one of the mall dressing rooms. I asked Jed what goes through his mind when he hears stories like this from a trusted, first-hand source.
But I really want to go to Manila and find this changing room and just, put a camera in there and see what happens. So when I hear stories, creepy stories, spooky stories, supernatural stories, my first kind of thing to do is, okay, I'm going to try and figure out this. I'm going to try and explain it with science or, guesswork or Googling. And, I've just got to admit, sometimes we don't know the answer yet, where our brains can't comprehend what's happening. I have a theory about what ghosts are as well. And you may have heard this theory before, but my theory is that the majority of ghost sightings is infrasound. It's audio that's imperceptible to human hearing, but it affects our optical nerve. So even though we can't hear it, we can feel it, and our brain has to do something with that information. So it forms any kind of image in the corner of your eye, which is a lot of the times why we see ghosts in the corner of our eye, or just it's a flash, and that's our optical nerve like vibrating to this infrasound. And how infrasound is created, it's with the acoustics in certain places and pipes, like old pipes in these old buildings that have bad plumbing and big open spaces. That's the perfect acoustics to generate infrasound. I'd love to get some kind of grant and study this properly and just go out and spend a year studying infrasound and trying to do repeatable science experiments in order to figure out if this is the reason people see ghosts. Because I never disbelieve someone if they see a ghost, never, because I think they have seen something. It's just the explanation for what it is. Is it someone who passed, or is it something to do with the way our brain processes information?
So do you think the lady in the dressing room was from infrasound?
I don't know, but I think there must be an explanation. If I was there, I wouldn't leave that place until I found out an explanation, and I would like accidentally smash that glass to see what's behind it, and I'd call the police as well. Like I have to ask my sister, why didn't you call the police? This is a missing case, missing girl case. I'm sure. Hopefully, there's an explanation. Like they're playing a prank on my mum and my sister or something. I don't know, but it's very strange.
Very strange indeed. So, like you mentioned before, these stories became less real and more entertainment for Jed, and he ended up creating his own urban legends for his fellow classmates as a kid, which led to some curious things happening.
Okay, like I know I said that, like, I don't really believe in ghosts until I see evidence, but there have been some strange things that have happened to me in the past. One of the things I used to do is when I was 7 years old, I think I started when I was seven, I was at this Catholic school and we shared a kind of a school playground with the younger kids. Up to age 6, you're in the infant school, and from age 7 onwards to 10, you're in junior school. So when I was in the junior school, I used to show all of the infant kids, I used to do a horror tour around the school and show them spooky things around the school, the haunted areas. And obviously, I'd be making it up at the top of my head, but the kind of stops I would do is I would show them the storm drain in the middle of the playground, and I would say, that's where the devil comes up and will take you down to hell. So whatever you do, don't step on that drain or the devil will get you. And then there was these steps going down to the boiler room, and I said, okay, that's where the grey lady lives. And if you see the grey lady at the bottom of that steps, she'll ask you for food. And if you don't give her food, then she will eat you and lick your bones dry. So I created a craze of like these kids carrying around rotten apples in their pockets to give to the grey lady in school. So I did this for like 2 years at least, and there was one part of this where because it's a Catholic school, the school was linked to a church, and there was a little alleyway from the school playground to the church that was about a minute walk, and halfway down there is a kind of an outside toilet type thing, completely abandoned, no water in the toilet or whatever. But there was like a rope hanging down from the middle of it. You open the door, there's a rope hanging down, and it's probably just a wire or something. But I would say to these kids, and this is where this little girl who used to go to this school, she was so scared by all the creepy things in this haunted school that she killed herself. Really, I was really dark at 7 years old, and they would all scream and run away. But then I did it so often, I actually started to see things myself. So I would start to see a little girl, like just in my periphery. I would be like, huh, that's interesting. And then one time I was in the school playground and I looked up at the classroom where my classroom is, and looking down from the window was the outline of a like a little girl looking at me, directly at me. And no one's allowed to be inside the classroom when it's like playtime. So this little girl standing there, I was just like, what's going on? And other people could see it too. And then we rushed straight into the classroom afterwards, and there was nobody there. So that's always stuck with me, that wow, like, did I just manifest that? Is this a tulpa, which we didn't host? That a tulpa is a creature that is manifested through groupthink. If enough people think of a creature or an entity, it will come to life, which is what we did with host. And maybe I got the first idea when I was 7 with this little girl, and then it kind of happened again. So I started a rumor about our rival school, this school called Notre Dame. It was a girls' school. And I said, oh, like, I've heard from people who go to Notre Dame that if you have detention, you have to put up the chairs in the school hall after school. And I heard a story that a headless nun, it was a school run by nuns, by the way. A headless nun comes if you're naughty, and if you're the last one left putting up the chairs, she'll take you and she'll take your head. And I said this so much, and I just never thought anyone else would realize that outside of our school. But then years later, literally 10 years later, I went out with this girl and she went to Notre Dame coincidentally. And she'd be like, oh, yeah, you'd love this, Jed. Okay, so our school was haunted, and it was haunted by this headless nun. And she would tell me these intricate story about the headless nun who kills people on detention. And I was like, hang on, I invented that story when I was 7, and it's made it to your school. And she's like, people still talk about it. People have seen this headless nun in school. And I was like, I swear on my life, I invented that story when I was 7. And to my knowledge, they probably still talk about the headless nun at Notre Dame. So it's weird to think that a lot of these like stories and ghost stories and monster stories, they're kind of manifested through, through sharing ideas and sharing this mythology, and sometimes it just comes from a crazy little kid like me.
I absolutely love this. Not just because imagining baby Jed taking kids around school and scaring them is the cutest image ever, but because it shows just how influential stories are. He began to see the little girl he created. Other students began to see the headless nun he created. These spirits no longer existed solely in Jed's mind once those stories were shared. After the break, we'll be joined by Emma Webb, who talks about how filming Host materialized real horror into her life. And now, the stories continue. When the pandemic sent everyone into lockdown in 2020, Jed, along with Rob Savage and Gemma Hurley, wrote a horror movie called Host. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, and you can stream it now on Shudder. It all takes place within a Zoom call and follows 6 friends who decide to host a virtual seance. Without spoiling too much, a major theme of the film is the power of groupthink and what can happen when our fears manifest in our physical reality, which is what makes the following even that much more fascinating.
So Jed had mentioned that you were starting to see like shadow figures like in your doorway. I think he meant
Yeah. Oh no, you're reminding
I'm
me.
so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I'm in a different bedroom now. I'm at my mum's now, but I'm in a different bedroom. Okay. My name is Emma Webb. I am from London, and Jed is like my oldest movie pal. Like I've known Jed, was just saying, for about 6 years. We met at Comic-Con. Can you hear that squeaking?
Don't mind Emma's adorable puppy making noise throughout the interview.
We were both just like into our films. We both loved horror films. And then we made a little short film called Multiplex that hasn't actually come out yet. And then we had COVID, and then we made the film called Host. It was made in 6 weeks from the first idea to it actually coming out. So the whole filming, editing, everything was done in 6 weeks.
Reminiscent of other found footage films, all of the actors used their real names for their characters and filmed from their own homes. It really gave the movie an incredibly authentic feel. I really felt like I was snooping on these friends' Zoom hangout. But what also contributed to the truly convincing performances and story was the amount of practice seances held before filming began. And some of what you see in the movie actually happened during these seances. Here's Jed again.
But we did a lot of seances off camera as well to practice, to get the beats ready with real psychics, with real exorcists and stuff. And
You know, we were kind of all a little bit all spooky, but we were like drinking and we were like, whatever, it's fine. And then stuff actually happened to me.
So each of the women had a lit candle on their desk. The medium asked for any spirits to make their presence be known. And at that moment, Emma's candle went out.
And it had been still the whole time. And I was like, you can see it in the thing. I'm like, some of the stuff in the movie actually happened in real life. Obviously, no one got set on fire. No one fell out of a window. But for me, I felt this pressure on my feet. And the medium was saying, who's got problems with their feet right now? Whose feet are hurting? I was like, oh my God. Because you could just see this in frame. I was like, how would she know that? It's like, how would she know? And actually, it was after that I started freaking out. Because at the end of the real seance, well, I'm not going to do that because it was a real seance. The medium was telling us to like cut the rope, similar to what it's like in the film. And I remember being like, I don't know if I can cut it in my head mentally. Like, I'm panicking. I don't think I like, what if my scissors are blunt in my head? And then that kind of happened. And then it was just kind of like, you know, when you're just a bit like, I'm just going to pretend like I'm fine and I'm not worried, but I was definitely a little bit scared.
after the film finished, very soon after we finished it, it came out, to great acclaim, and it was a lot of fun for us. But the person who it was least fun for, maybe, was Emma, because she couldn't sleep, because all of these scenes, these scary scenes, were filmed in the actors' own houses. Emma started not being able to sleep in her own room.
Do you know what it was? There was this bit in the film where I had to, so you know the bit where I have to throw the blanket over the demon. So we shot that like 120 times or something like that, because I couldn't get the blanket to fall on it. And it was like really late nights, and it was just where my bedroom was and the landing was. And every night when I'd go to bed, I could obviously see my door. It was like that same shot that is in the film. I was like laying there, I could see the door. And then my door started opening by itself. And it's one of those doors that once you click it into place, it doesn't open. In my door, so my door would just be left open, and I would be sure that I could see in the doorway like a figure.
So she would call me at like 1, 2 in the morning, and I would just be like on the phone to her and texting her and stuff and keeping her busy until the sun came up, because she would tell me she would text me or send me a voice like, Jed, there's a man in my room. There's a man in my room. He's standing at my door. He's standing. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, Emma, there's nobody there. Don't worry. And I'd call her and say, Emma, don't worry. There's nothing there. Like you're imagining it. And she would do it all the time. So she was scared. She was scared to sleep in her own house. So, but as soon as the sun came up, she would be like, okay, it's fine now. Thanks. And then she would go to sleep. So
it was so, because I was like, oh my God, have I actually made a demon come here? And the worst time, I walked out of it literally makes my eyes water because it's literally in real life, it's just right there for me. But I walked out of my bedroom and I looked up, and we have an attic and there's no ladder going up. It's like, it's all stuffed away up there, but there's no lid. There's no lid. There's no like panel there. So if you look, I looked up, and I don't know why I looked up, because why would I? I never do. The light was swinging like that. And I swear to God, no one had been up there. That wasn't in my imagination. Like, I saw it. My light bulb was going like that. And that, like, the light was off. No one had been up there. We'd never go up there. I think I was alone in the house when it happened. And I was just like, I just burst out crying, and I was so scared. And then, yeah, we'd booked on to do this like seance to promote the film.
And everyone was on the Zoom. And Emma wasn't come on, and I was like, Emma, can you come on? This is for like the DVD extras. And she came on, and she was so shaken. She was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm too scared. I'm not coming on. I'm not doing it again.
It was so horrible.
Yeah, it really affected her. She's totally fine now. I sent loads of sage to her house from Amazon. I sent her sage, so she saged her house, and so it's all fine now. And for the last like 2 years, she's not mentioned it, so I'm sure it's fine.
Towards the end of my chat with Emma, her puppy began barking.
Do you want me to stop the dog? One second. I'm sorry. Maybe she can. Oh my God, no. Maybe she can like see a ghost. So that's And you know what as well? That's the landing. That's like where all my stuff happened.
Stop.
I swear.
It knows that we're talking about it. So...
I've got my sage and my dog. I'll be fine.
Yes, exactly.
And if anything does happen, I'm calling you to tell you.
I'll stay on the phone with you if you need.
Emma may have been the most affected of the cast, but she certainly was not the only one to get a major scare from this whole experience.
Something happened as well with Gemma.
So while we were preparing to make host, obviously we did some fake seances, or some they weren't actually fake. They were with a real psychic lady. We wanted to see how these ladies would act under real seance, circumstances, with the candle, with the lights off, etc. And we were taking notes the whole time. And there was this one part where Gemma Moore, she was experiencing something. She was feeling something touching her neck, which we actually put in the film as well. We kind of recreated that. And then I think a plant or a cupboard that was behind her fell down.
A book flew out of the bookcase.
And we have that captured on camera, by the way. Something like flies across the room behind her or something.
And there was a noise in the background, and she freaked out. She lost it.
And I remember like because I was watching this like transfixed, and I was like texting Rob. I was like, oh my God, this is gold. This is gold.
And we had to stop the seance. We had to give it up and make sure Gemma was okay.
So yeah, it's the research we did that ended up almost proving supernatural. But again, there must be an explanation in my mind. I don't know what it is though.
Nothing will ever convince you.
As Jed mentioned earlier, a tulpa is a sentient being that is created from your mind and manifests in your reality. If you had an imaginary friend as a kid, that could be considered a tulpa. Tulpas exist all around us. If you've ever read a graphic novel, watched a TV show or movie, all those characters started out in someone's head and now have a life of their own. And the more people engage with and pay attention to them, the more powerful they become. So when Jed's story of the headless nun was passed around, enough people believed in her that she began to take form. And when everyone tuned in to watch a demon materialize and host, all that attention made it happen off screen in Emma's home. I wonder how long it will take for the 8-foot man with slimy skin to manifest in your home. To keep up with Jed, you can follow him on Instagram at Jed Shepherd and keep an eye out for Emma's band Sirens, releasing new music soon. Thanks for joining me today. Have you ever physically manifested an entity? Send me an email at storieswithsapphire@gmail.com. And did you know that I offer bone and tarot readings? You can schedule a session at storieswithsapphire.com. Salamat and good night.